This episode of Podcast Beyond is presented by My.Games and their new shooter, Warface Breakout.
Beyond and hello everyone, my name is Jonathon Dornbush and this is Podcast Beyond episode I think maybe 649 or 650 depending on when the other episode that's going to go up within hours of this episode goes up. We have so much PlayStation 5 news to talk about on this episode. There's so much Sony stuff, so I do want to say if you're looking for The Last of Us Part 2 spoiler-free review cast, that is the other episode going up very shortly before or after this one. So please check that out if you want some Last of Us review impressions. You can hear all that then. But this episode is going to be all about the PlayStation 5 and the PS5 reveal event that, oh my God, showed so much. I'm joined this week by Brian Altano.
Hey, Beyond.
Beyond. Lucy O'Brien.
Beyond.
And Max Scoville.
PlayStation.
Guys, we have so much to talk about. It's amazing.
Like the pipe was finally unblocked.
Yeah, I like the number of episodes where we've been like, PlayStation games are coming soon. They're coming soon. We're gonna get into all of our reactions to the biggest games, some of the strange games, and some of the stuff that we didn't see in this PlayStation 5 reveal event. If you haven't watched it, we'll have some of the B-roll going, but please go check out all of these really cool trailers. But I do want to start off, of course, with the console itself. We were all watching the show together. We were listening and talking over Discord together. And throughout the whole show, we were all like, are they going to show it? Are they leading up to the console? And they led up to the console. They showed the design of the PS5. And in fact, they showed two designs. We have one with a disc drive in it, and then also an all-digital edition, much like the Xbox One S SAD edition. We didn't get prices for this or a release date, but we did get a design. So I want to know, everyone, what did you think of this design? Lucy, let's start with you, since I know the design has been a big thing for you.
Well, I mean, as I said on our live stream, like I've always wanted Sony to go like stupid crazy with this because like console designs have got increasingly conservative over the years. And I said all along, like make this like Homer's car, like just add a whole bunch of weird to it, make it strange, like have a strange shape and all that. And I gotta say, they really delivered on this one. I mean, it is a weird looking console. I mean, the memes are already starting as we speak. The meme factory is generating. I love it. I have absolutely no idea how it's going to work aesthetically in my apartment. But
they have shown photos of it horizontally. I will say there are photos that show it. You can put it in your
which is good. I can't not think of the disk drive as a little hernia. You know what I mean? Because I was like, it's pregnant, but on the side, so it's more like a little hernia, like on the side there.
I think if you looked at it head on, it would probably look like the discless version is us before we went into quarantine, and then there's the other version where we have like we've gained the COVID-19 and we have.
That is exactly where my thoughts went to.
It's got a little pooch, it needs you can work it off. You can lose that weight in like a week or two. You just clean eating, no beer for a couple of days. But why would you want to do that?
Yeah, no, the PS5 deserves to eat some discs now and then. It wants to chow down, have some snacks.
No, I'm totally with you guys. This is probably one of the more surprising looking console reveals ever, honestly, in terms of the first impressions, just in terms of like being something that is so completely non-traditional while immediately screaming video game console at you. Obviously, a lot of people are being incredibly reductive and being like, it looks like a router. And I'm old enough to know that they said the same stuff for the Nintendo Wii. I think people like they get really bored when they just see a big black sideways box or vertical box. But they also don't want it to go too strange in another direction. I'm actually all for it. The interesting thing to me is that people have started to line up using the disk drive size and the USB size in the front, exactly how much bigger or taller it would be than the Series X. And it's obviously thinner, but it is about 5 to 6 inches taller, which is pretty sizable. Like honestly, maybe could be 4 inches, but it's either way. This is a significant size taller than the Series X, and it got me looking at my entertainment center. And wondering how's this going to work in here? Do I put it sideways? Do I put it vertical? But the second we saw that controller, I think we kind of hoped that it would aesthetically match the bizarre weirdness of how kind of like weird futurism they went with that, and the white and black color scheme, and they delivered, and I'm all for it. We've yet to see if there's any other colors that we'll see for it, but I remember when the Series X came out, people were immediately like, "Oh, you can put stickers on it, you can put skins on it," and I don't know if I want to do that with this, like at all. Like it feels like putting a bumper sticker on a Bentley, you know?
It really feels like, just by looking at it, that it went through so many different iterations that someone just said, okay, like let's just tear up the history books and start afresh and like just go nuts with it. And like just go as crazy as you want, and then we'll kind of like lower it from there. And I'd really love to see some of those other designs, because it does
Yeah.
feel like we said this on the live show. I think Altano, you said it, like it does feel like it could have been a mock-up from a fan.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. And somebody tweeted at me. Apparently, the guys at Game Explain had an almost exact reaction, because they've been covering Nintendo stuff so deeply over there for years too. In that year leading up to a new console launch, there's always these like bizarre 3D renders that come out that are these hyper futuristic, borderline gaudy, over the top, angular. There's like weird edges jutting out, and there's crystals and lights, and the one we get is never that interesting, especially you look at the PS4. It's very simple, very modern and elegant and sleek. Even the PS4 Pro wasn't a huge leap over that. This thing is just like, this is a alien spaceship. It's super weird, and I really love it. Max, what do you think?
I'm super into it. I also, here's the thing about a game console is why does it matter? Like if you think it's a stupid looking thing to have in your house, wait till you see the video games you're going to be playing on it, because you're going to be doing all sorts of, like, you're going to have a cardboard box on your head, crashing cars into people. You're dropping out of a school bus with balloons on your head. Like, it's just like video games are inherently, they're playful and silly things. Like, you can play the most aggro, dude bro, carbon fiber realistic possible, but you're still playing a game. Like you're gonna be fighting teenagers over the internet. So like maybe just loosen up a little bit. Like if you want industrial grade hardcore technology, like get a PC. Like I'm fine with this being kind of silly looking.
I also think that it was like really like in step with that entire presentation, which is very much focused like on family friendly games for the most part. You know what I mean? Like this really felt like they were positioning a new video game console with a whole bunch of games for the whole family. You know what I mean? Whereas I feel like the Xbox Series X does not have that that marketing spin at all. It's very much, this is basically a PC.
That's a really good point. Like, I feel like the Switch was kind of an interesting turning point because a lot of adults jumped on it, and that is very clearly a machine for children. Like, that's a toy, Yeah. And there's been this weird stretch of video game hardware, and we've all grown up with it, where back in the day, they were like, video games are toys, they're for children, and then those children grow up, and like I remember the first PlayStation came out, and as a kid, I was like, well, that's kind of boring, and like you look at the N64, and you're like, holy crap, it's got a purple, three-handled controller. That's wild. I'm into that. And then, as I got older, I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted things to look cool, but like now I don't really care, because it's a machine that I use to play games, because I never fully turned into an adult. So like, I don't know. It's just,
there is that weird, kind of creamy center of being an old jaded person who doesn't care how things look, because you don't care about judgment anymore. Like I'll go to the store in sweatpants in 2020. I don't care. Like, and I'll buy just garbage. I don't care anymore. But also when you're a child, like you would look at something like the PS5 and be like, that is the coolest thing in the world, and the most futuristic thing I've ever owned, compared to like children's toys are garbage looking. And I think that like the Switch, it was sort of like an interesting, so I would say that like the gray Switch is probably the most minimalist and subdued Nintendo handheld console that we've seen since the Wii and the DS Lite, but still definitely evocative of a children's toy. And the PS5 is kind of the same way. It is sleek, it is minimalist, it's sexy is a word that gets thrown around a lot. I hate using that word to describe hardware, but I can see why people are using it here. But there is that part in your teens and your 20s where you're like, I'm too cool for this, and you're just like, you've eclipsed the part where you can see why Cinnamon Toast Crunch tastes so good, and you've not yet reached the part where you're old enough to stop caring what the world thinks of you. And so you'll get there, I promise you.
Oh yeah, I've come back around. I definitely know what you mean. I've come back around and been like, this thing looks goofy, and I can't wait to have it in my house. I think
Yeah.
the digital edition looks more like what the design of the console is supposed to be. And like Lucy was saying, the disk drive is a weird addition.
Mhm.
But I do think, like Lucy was pointing out, it really does speak to both of their philosophies because Xbox wants you to think of their thing as an extension of your PC. They want you to play games on the PC, on the Xbox One, or on the Xbox Series X. They don't really care. PlayStation wants you to buy this new, weird, different thing, and it's going to really stand out and be something that you're not going to mistake for your other game consoles. So yeah,
Honestly, no, you guys are totally right about this. Just to expand on this real quick, I think that is a major point in the console wars, is to draw a clear, defined lines between generations and tell the audience this is why you need to move on to the new thing. And it'll be unmistakable seeing the PS4 and the PS5 on shelves next to each other, whereas the Series X and the One X and the One S and stuff like that, and whatever they
Lockhart.
want to, Lockhart, Landcroft, whatever they want to call the next the baby version of that. I think it's really important to do that. Like I think that's one of the reasons the Wii U failed so hard, was because it was indistinguishable from what the Wii was attempting to do. It shipped with required a lot of the same controllers. I think you really need to tell consumers this is a new leap. This is a new system. These are exclusive games, and Microsoft is trying something very different here, and I support it, and I'll be purchasing one of those as well. But their whole philosophy of like no genuinely exclusive games in year one, everything will work across the board, and all your controllers will work the same, and all that stuff like that. I think it's awesome, and it's incredibly consumer friendly. But on the flip side, it doesn't really illustrate the generational divide and leap between the previous console and the new one. And for a console manufacturer that didn't actually come out on top this time around, I think it's important for them to do that. Whereas PlayStation, I think this is like a really bold, big, loud strategy for them. I think this was a phenomenal coming out party today to just go, here we are. We're starting the new generation. Here's who we have on our team. And this is why this big, weird new thing is going to be something you want by the end of this year.
yeah, absolutely. They really need to give us all a reason to buy into this thing, and that's what most of this show is about. So let's jump into all of the games that were shown. And I think the biggest one to start off with is what's going to be a launch, if not day, window game for the PS5. It is the next Marvel Spider-Man from Insomniac, and that opened the show as the first game aside from GTA 5, which we can get to later. But this was the first exclusive show, and this was the first big game. And man, that is, I could not think of a better system seller. Like that is the one of the biggest PS4 exclusives. It's the best-selling superhero game of all time. Spider-Man is one of the most popular superheroes. What a way to tell people, hey, buy the PS5 because you get the next Spider-Man. What did you all think of the review?
I feel like we literally called this game almost beat for beat in if you piecemeal together a bunch of conversations we've had on the show. We specifically were like, we want a winter New York City version of the original Spider-Man game that sort of works either as a sequel or a side story. And then obviously everybody wants Miles Morales. And so yeah, this was fantastic. This is like the best way to kick off a show.
Again, it's kind of speaks to that very like holiday focused period. People are going to want to play this game. It's going to be Christmas. It's such a clever game to launch this system with for so many reasons. One thing that I just want to add is that we've been a lot of the SSD talk that we've sort of been hearing throughout the year, sort of drip fed throughout the year about how impressive the SSD is going to be. I think this is going to be an amazing showcase of that, because remember when Mark Cerny was first showing Wired magazine back in the day about what the PlayStation 5 could do, he used Spider-Man as an example of how like an open world can suddenly be there in the blink of an eye rather than like loaded in after 15 seconds. So I think A, it's going to be a massive showcase. B, it's going to be an incredibly family friendly purchase, and C, it's exclusive to PlayStation 5. It's just such a win across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that it's smart because they could all, I mean, it's still very possible that they come out and they're like, hey, here's Spider-Man remastered for PlayStation 5, but to be like, hey, you know what this game feels like on a PS4, like here's what it's like, a new experience. But like imagine if they, what if like Infamous First Light had come out on PS4 Pro, Like, what if there'd been some kind of like little incremental thing where you're like, and it didn't matter because that game got a PS4 Pro patch anyway, but like that idea of being like, this is something that's familiar, but it's also got a layer of newness to it. So
Yep.
you're not just revisiting, old territory. It's also like, um, that's it's rad for Sony to like launch this next generation of hardware by being like, hey, here's a black superhero. Like
Yeah.
that's good shit. We need that right
and
now. So
and I do want to say on that point, they after the fact, Evan Narciss on Twitter announced that he is on the writing team for this game, and he, if you
oh,
don't know him,
awesome.
yeah, he's written for Kotaku and IO9 and Time and a lot of publications. but he's
He wrote
also-
a really cool Black Panther comic.
exactly,
that-
yeah, he wrote a
yeah,
really
no,
great
he's
Black Panther run. So he obviously, that's a very important thing when they're going to be telling a Miles story, to have a black writer being able to give voice to Miles. So it's sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, to add to that too. I mean, Jonathan, you're like one of the biggest like Marvel movie fans I know. This was already sort of designed to be kind of a down year for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They had obviously Black Widow, and pretty much everything else got pushed down the pipeline, and now movie theaters basically don't exist. Period. And so to take one of the most iconic superhero characters of all time in a year that we can't really celebrate superhero movies in the theaters anymore, and thrust that story into a massive, gorgeous open world launch game on a brand new next gen console is about as cool as it gets. And it made me really happy to know that like there's an entire generation of people that watched something like Spider-Verse or watched Endgame, and like a whole new generation of kids growing up like collecting toys and reading comics, and they're going to have this story on day one. Like
Yeah.
there's been Spider-Man games in the past that have launched near systems, and they're never like this. They're never on this level of quality, and we already know the quality we're going to get with this game because it's basically a spin-off slash semi sequel to one of the best games of the last generation.
We talk a lot about system sellers when new consoles are launching, and I think it's difficult to overstate how big this game will probably be as a next generation launch, if not day window game, because they said holiday 2020, and of course we don't have any dates yet, but that clearly means it's going to come out around launch. I do want to mention, because this is the first next gen Insomniac game we're going to get. Insomniac is the most recent first party studio to join after the success of Spider-Man, but they've been a long running partner with PlayStation, and one of those long running partnerships has been Ratchet and Clank, which is also coming back on PS5. I think the two-hander of this one shows that, like, damn, Insomniac was a really good pickup as a PlayStation first-party team. Like, here you go, two of the best showings from this show. But I thought that trailer, like, whether or not you're a longtime Ratchet fan like me, or longtime listener and viewer of the show K-Babs, or if you're newer to the series, this was a great trailer, and I think a showcase for the PS5 SSD. What did you all think of the Rift Apart trailer?
I just want to say that, like, Dono, I totally agree. I don't really know Ratchet and Clank. I never played Ratchet and Clank. But this was the best showcase of what the tech can do in the whole of the conference, or whatever. What are we calling this little digital event? It was very much like you could see that SSD at work, and it looked different. It looked better and crazier and more ambitious than anything you would be able to do on this gen hardware. And so, for my money, this was actually the most impressive demo, because like it was like, okay, this is next gen. This is like, you will only be able to play this on a next gen machine. Like, you could not play this on a PlayStation 4, and that in my mind just like totally sells it.
Yeah, the sort of instantaneous loading between areas was wildly creative, and at the simultaneously technically incredibly impressive. This is also a like through and through exclusive, just like Spider-Man was. And this is, we're going to see a lot of next gen tech demos over the next 6 months. This one feels really far along. Like, this doesn't feel like this is a game where they were like, here's a logo, or here's some character art, or here's like a little bit of a demo. This one feels like it's running and it's firing on all cylinders, and there's insane things happening all over the screen, and nothing is hiccuping. And obviously it's a tech demo, and they buttoned it up to make it look as good as possible. But I wouldn't be surprised if we were playing this game within 6 to 8 months of the system launching, because it looks really polished and looks really far along.
No, I was saying in the post show we did, but if I hadn't played that last game, I would think this was just bullshit. Like it the way that's like the part where he's like, you know, tearing through rifts and jumping around. It's like that looks it looks like a trailer. Like it looks pre-rendered, it looks nonsense, but I think that's the whole point, is that that's the kind of weird, like, just entirely sort of repopulating the screen with something brand new at the snap of a process or whatever, like whatever. It's also it's interesting because with games we're always torn between, like, you want to show off new hardware. Are you going to go with like the most hyper realistic thing possible and try to, like, breach that uncanny valley, or are you going to show something that no one's ever seen before and be like, you're playing a Pixar movie having a manic episode, like it's.
Yeah.
And this is, I don't know, this is cool. It's also I forget this because I was kind of a little bit older when the Ratchet games showed up, but like a lot of people have a ton of nostalgia for this, and Jonathan, you're a perfect example of that. So
yeah, it's like everyone was saying, I think a really great showcase, because Ratchet, just jumped from one universe to the other. He's not walking through a hallway to get to the next universe. It really did show what they've been telling us about the SSD for so long. I do want to get though to another first party game. No date on this one like Ratchet, but a unsurprising sequel announcement, but I think one we're all really excited about. Horizon Zero Dawn 2, aka Horizon Forbidden West. They chose a name. They had to choose some words, and they put different new words into the title.
I forget, like, I'm at the point with like video game names and even movie names, I guess, at this point, where like they all have, and because I've got quarantine brain, where things don't really stick like they used to. Like I keep getting it wrong. I keep thinking it's called Horizon Three Kingdoms. Why do I think that? Why do I think that?
Well, it is.
what
It
is
is
Three
definitely-
Kingdoms?
Was Three
Yeah.
Kingdoms ever a thing? Was there ever a property
Fire
called?
Emblem Three Houses?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think Three
Maybe.
Kingdoms is a restaurant.
Well, anyway, in my head, it's called Horizon Three Kingdoms, and I do want to say that it looks remarkable. It looks magnificent. I love it.
Yeah,
I
no,
love
it
what I
looks
saw.
stunning. It's definitely following the naming convention of the Frozen Wilds DLC in terms of like you said, Lucy, just sort of like kind of like a word salad, just grabbing a couple of words and gluing them together. Well, I think if we say it 100 times, we'll get used to it. But more importantly, I really, really love how they're much more leaning into this sort of like living, breathing essence of this world. I feel like they scratched the surface with the last one with sort of ancillary foxes running around and things that you could smash with your rod to create new pouches and such. But in this, it looks like they're doing like there was that thing where they zoomed in on like a crab and a fish, and then you zoom out and you're underwater, and it's got this whole sort of like subterranean temple look to it. There's obviously going to be underwater combat and traversal. I don't know how you'll get around the world, but I imagine like you had that weird like robot horse in the last game. Maybe you'll get like a robot boat this time, like just a regular boat. It's giving me sort of like Wind Waker vibes on the overworld area, where it panned out and it showed how much it was sort of water worlded and flooded over. But obviously you see there's the tremendous diversity in the topography and environments here, and that's really what this is all about. Like, so one of my favorite things about the last game was just how incredibly video gamey it was, where you went from like lava land to like ice zone, and it was all like tied together with this very serious story, but it was also pretty much about fighting giant robot beasts. And so yeah, I'm so glad they're making this game, and I can't wait to see how it looks on PS5.
Things that we also can't kind of even fathom, even from watching this trailer, is that because loading times are essentially eliminated, that means that environments are able to be way more detailed. There's no longer going to be this long, like vast stretches of nothing. Like we are going to see the most incredible kind of minute to minute environments. And like Horizon Zero Dawn already had such a fantastic like gamescape.
Yep.
Don't know where that came from. But it and to sort of think of what can be done on the PlayStation 5 in this universe is so exciting. Like just so exciting to me.
No, I mean Zero Dawn might be the best looking video game of this generation. I mean, it's definitely up for debate, but I think it's up there, like in terms of just the sheer amount of detail that went into that world. I mean, you could even the fact that when Kojima used the Decima engine and took almost everything out, it still looked gorgeous. Like even just the rocks in that game looked amazing. So
yeah, I mean, I'm fully of the school of thought that video game sequels are or at least number two sequels are almost always better than the first iteration because you get a chance to go back and tweak the things, unless you totally throw out the whole rule book and just screw everything up. Um, but I think there's a very good chance that this is sort of, you look at like, I don't know, Doom 2, Uncharted 2, like stuff where it kind of just, Super Mario Worlds it and just
Assassin's Creed 2, yeah.
exactly, yeah, steps
Yeah.
the formula forward a bit. So
Yeah.
no, it'll be impressive, and I want to see what that looks like for the technology. Like I want to see like what, like one of my, I think, one of my issues with the first game is sort of how structurally video gamey it is, and how like there's just very clear cut areas, but if they really like double down on being like, here's an ecosystem, some of it will try to kill you and some of it is your friend, have fun, like that's what I want to see. So
Yeah, there's a lot of potential there, and especially as everyone's been saying, seeing how they continue to evolve the Decima engine is going to be really exciting. Don't have a date on that one yet, but I expect we'll see more in the months to come. On the exclusive front, there were a lot of other games. I just want to quickly give a shout out to Returnal because Housemarque is awesome. The Resogun Nex Machina Alienation devs, it's great to see them back with a different perspective game, but one that seems to stay true to their shoot 'em up roots.
And shout out to middle-aged Irish women protagonists.
Exactly. Yes.
She was a
She was
little
here.
she was a little bit on the older side than the usual video game protagonist. I was like,
Very true.
shout out to you, lady.
There was a lot of female characters front and center in a lot of the trailers and reveals today, which was definitely cool to see.
It was great.
Um,
Yeah.
Obviously, a big shift over, I don't know, say 10 years ago, 7 years ago.
Yeah. The year of dads from even just a few years ago at the Sony press conferences. It's a bit different now. But the other exclusive I definitely want us to touch on is, of course, the Demon Souls Bluepoint Games remake. We've been hearing Bluepoint's been working on a PS5 game for a while. It is a beautiful Demon Souls remake that Shuhei got to introduce on the stream, and it is that is one pretty looking remake. I didn't get to play the original Demon Souls. I played it for like 20 minutes and then bounced back in the day. But as I know we have a lot of Soulsborne fans on the show, what did you all think of the first look at this?
It's absolutely stunning. I saw some side by sides kicking around on Twitter that some fans have put together. Which one? Specifically, it was the Tower Knight, who like is seen in the trailer. He's the dude with the gigantic shield, and the amount of detail they've just done around him is definitely on par with like kind of what we saw with Shadow of the Colossus. And I think that structurally they kept that game pretty intact, and I think that'll probably be the same thing this time around. But I'm wondering what sort of tweaks are happening under the hood. But do we know when we're going to be playing this game? Like, is this launch? Is this launch window? Like, no date, right?
Nothing in the emails or blog posts I've seen yet. Given the track record of the show, they'll probably announce that as soon as we wrap up. But yeah, nothing yet. I'm surprised. I thought this would have been sort of a like launch game highlight, but maybe it's coming in the first year. We don't really have a clear idea.
No, I never really played much of the original, and so this is going to be a brand new game for me, and I'm super hyped for that.
Yeah, that's right. It's going back to the original. Like, so many people missed it the first time around. Like, now they get the opportunity to do that without kind of feeling like they're going back a significant generational step.
Which is the entire philosophy and point of like a good remake, Like, I think that's why like a company like Bluepoint exists, is to sort of modernize classic games like this and bring them to a whole new audience.
My experience with Demon Souls is like, in an era when I didn't have a PS3, hearing that this was a very hard game and that a lot of people didn't like it because it was too hard, and there wasn't that Dark Souls conversation quite yet, and then hearing that somebody had managed to speed run it in like 32 minutes, and then pulling that up and watching it and being like, holy mother of God, like he's just half naked and just sprinting through this like horrible castle full of like flaming balls and skeleton men, and then it was free on PlayStation Plus, and I was like, I want to try that too. And I made it through like, I don't know, like 2 areas, and I was like, just like, just Benny Hilling it through this castle, and then just getting like clobbered, and then being like, I should try to actually play this, but having no idea how to start, like no feedback from friends or like any of the stuff that got me into Bloodborne, and just being like, this is impossible, and then giving up. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Like, I hope that they, like, obviously you don't want to mess with a thing that people love dearly. You don't want to like, fuss with a masterpiece, but like quality of life stuff, load times, I don't know what doesn't hold up about the original, because I clearly never got into it, but obviously like a PS3 game from what was that, 2009, 8, something like that.
It was, I
Um,
think, yeah, it was 8 or 9 because I was playing it right before I moved to Australia, which was 2010.
okay, so yeah, like it's easy to be like, yeah, those games hold up just fine, but like if you go back, you're like, there's like weird, load time stuff. There's like odd differences in how you save your game. Like there's just little things we've gotten used to with how video games are constantly kind of shifting and evolving. So hopefully they can kind of mess with that a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
it came out in 2009 in Japan and North America. So yeah, to see what they are able to do after so much of that genre has taken off
The
with
hell was
this.
I playing it in New Zealand? Like that is weird. We never usually got those kind of.
You stole it? I don't know.
I bought it secondhand, that's for sure.
Okay, then
Anyway,
yeah.
continue.
No, it's all good. But yeah, that definitely is a big one that I think we're all excited, and obviously the dedicated PlayStation audience is excited to see. There are a lot of other exclusives, but I do want to get to some third-party stuff. I do think it was great that they showed family-friendly stuff on the first-party side, like Astro's Playroom and Sackboy's Big Adventure. Smart of them to keep all of that stuff, and of course, Gran Turismo 7 in the fold. But on the third-party note, I do want to touch on two big Bethesda games that were part of this, Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo, which are, according to the blog posts on the PlayStation blog that came out after, both console exclusive to the PS5. They're going to also be on PC, but these are both games that we all thought were going to be multi-plat and are going to be PS5 exclusives. Deathloop this holiday. That's coming, in the launch window. Those are really big, surprising gets to me. I don't know how you all felt about these debuts for them, but those are
Look,
pretty impressive things to have.
yeah, like Deathloop is just, it's so, I mean, it's Dishonored, but with this kind of like rewind sort of like what's the Tom Cruise Emily Blunt movie? The you know what I mean.
Oh, Edge of Tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Live,
With
Die,
that kind of,
Repeat.
yeah, alternate title. Yeah. And like again, it's just like Arcane is so good at this stuff. Arcane is so good at this kind of like vertical traversal that we're seeing here. It's so good at these like powers that make you feel very godlike. And like with this added twist of this time loop and two protagonists, it seems, and also this very kind of unexpected, almost like grindhouse kind of aesthetic that they're going
Yep.
for. It's like unlike anything I've seen Arcane do before. And I mean, apart from the vertical traversal and the superpowers and everything that I just mentioned, but it seems like a real evolution for them. And I'm really, yeah, I want to play this. Like this is one of those games where I was like, I immediately want to play it now.
I have a sneaking suspicion we still don't understand what this game is exactly. Like, I get I think I talked about this at the reveal last year because it's sort of harping on some themes, like the fact that you're in this world and you've got to kill 8 people, but there's one person trying to kill you. Like, I feel like there's going to be some kind of weird, like ambient latent multiplayer like aspect to it. Um, and I don't know what that looks like. Like, I don't know if that's, I might be imagining things. It could entirely be a single player experience, but there's also the chance that maybe this assassin will like learn from how you approach stuff and gives you a title, like an entirely different, experience, however you play. Uh, I'm really hoping that this is, I guess, open world, or at least like they just kind of turn you loose on this island where you're like, yo, kill all these 8 people, kill this wolf dog, man. Like, go forth. Like, there's something about having like really just true freedom and getting like turned loose. And I get the feeling that with how the Dishonored series kind of evolved, they they've always been kind of playing within the confines of the technology they have at hand, but giving that team I don't know, like a new SSD that kind of eliminates immediate load times, like that could allow for some really interesting experiences. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
that one looks really exciting. I'm also curious to hear what you all think about Ghostwire Tokyo, the other Bethesda published game. This is from Tango, which is Shinji Mikami's studio. This was the one that was originally being directed by Akumi Nakamura, who left the game last year, and so I was surprised to see this one show up. I thought it was going to be a little further down the line, but Lucy, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it looked great. I still would really like to know that story because, by all accounts, this was Akumi Nakamura's idea, right? And so, I kind of want to know where this project is at. It seems like Shinji Mikami has maybe come on board and taken more of an active role than he initially had. Um, I think it looks very, very different to how I had imagined. It's kind of got like this control slash Dishonored vibe to it. Again, it's got that kind of like arcane, like powers. I mean, it's also very Bioshocky as well. And it's a little less like straight, like traditional horror than I expected, even though it has some very, very recognizable horror tropes. You know, the Slender Man, the guy in the with the white face and the tux, and then the headless schoolgirl. I mean, there's a lot of horror stuff going on, but it's also a lot more frenetic. It's a lot more psychedelic than I had anticipated. And yeah, again, this is like both Bethesda reveals. They looked really cool, but we didn't quite get a grasp of how they play. So like that's what I want to know next.
Yeah, this was a really interesting one. Max, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I was completely thrown for a loop to see it in first person because I feel like the way it was presented initially, especially with like Shinji Mikami coming out, like with knowing that this is the same studio that did Evil Within, and maybe that's on me for just making having expectations, but and I haven't gone back and watched the first reveal, but I feel like that was much more uh environmental exploration, third person stuff, and it looked like a kind of Tokyo based survival horror game, and now it looks bonkers. It looks like, I don't know, Shadow Warrior or something. Like, it still looks cool, but it looks like an entirely different game, which is
Yeah.
on me for I guess assuming too much in the first reveal. So
Yeah, no, it was
That's
definitely
on you. Like I think that like the Evil Within was a very clear evolution of Resident Evil. Like I think it was just where Shinji wanted to take survival horror next, and this is very different from that.
Mhm.
This is not like the next iteration of Evil Within. This is something new entirely.
yeah, I think we were all sort of expecting a spiritual sequel almost to the Evil Within, and
Yeah.
it's definitely looking different. So I'm excited to go hands on with that one. That one's 2021, so we'll see it soon. But continuing on the horror and Resident Evil front, we did get Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil Village, the VII, coming out in 2021. This is for PS4, Xbox Series X, and PC. All of the rumors that we've been hearing about it seem to be true. There's werewolf men. Chris Redfield's in there. There's both the village aspect, but also a mansion. I know we have some true love for Resident Evil on this franchise or on this podcast. So Brian, I'll start with you. What did you think of the reveal?
Yeah, I'm obsessed with this. I'm completely all for it. Incredibly excited. I think bringing in a bunch of other weird, ghastly beasts such as the werewolves and the witches is super cool. They released some key art right after the trailer. They basically put out a special developer message that has this bizarre, almost like gold wreath covered in crow feathers with like this nightmarish upside down kind of. It's almost looks like an infant baby, but twisted and gnarled, like just good creepy stuff. And they said, oh, you might want to pay extra attention to this one. And people are theorizing that there's Las Plagas, which was the sort of infection cult that happened in Resident Evil 4. Obviously huge sort of connections to Resident Evil 4 in terms of there's a giant castle setting, there's a cult in a town, the rural kind of backwoods setting. The other thing too that people are pointing out is that the currency in this game is Lei, or LEI, which is Romanian currency, home of the Transylvania. And so people might have a theory that there could be a sort of like Dracula connection to this. Like, I mean, maybe in this game you're fighting werewolves and witches and mermen, and by the end you fight Dracula. Who knows? Like,
It's Cabin in the Woods.
yeah, exactly. Throw it all in there.
The currency is also a throwback to Resi 4 as well. It really feels like we're going back to some of the weirder aspects of this series, which I'm so all here for.
Currency means that we'll probably need a merchant, which I'm into. The newly sort of overhauled inventory system, which is a slight departure from 7, which I thought was pretty cumbersome. 4 has one of my most like favorite cathartic inventory systems of all time. I've spent countless hours just like organizing my grenades in a row and vertically rotating my ammo cases so they're all color coded. This looks like obviously in line with Resident Evil 2 and 3 in terms of inventory system, so I'm into that. The trailer showed some really interesting elements in terms of the villagers, who look a lot obviously more fleshed out than the stuff we've seen in 4, but also the character models, which are pretty bizarre and freaky looking, right down to Chris Redfield, who they're essentially implying is a like kind of roided up villain now, I guess, from punching boulders and stuff. And like if you look at like the skin texture on some of these characters, like they've revealed like high res 4K screenshots of the stuff. It's all stunning. We don't know when we'll be playing this right now. 2021 is pretty much all we have to count on, but considering we're already halfway through this nightmare year, that's just bring it on. Let's get through it and get to the good stuff. I can't wait for this.
I love
pretty
that like
stoked.
Resident Evil has just become a thing again, right?
Yeah.
Like, sorry, Max, I jumped in, but yeah,
No,
it's
it's
just
all
like
right.
we were suffering, us fans, for a long time. Around 6, and maybe some of the weaker entries of Revelations 2. It was like, oh, no more, just put this out of its misery. And then along came 7, and all of a sudden these remakes, and it's just like it's such an amazing time to be a fan again.
Well,
Mhm.
it seems like they really, with the later entries that were causing problems, they were trying to do too much in one game, and now they're just like, let's just split it up and have like clearly defined goals for different projects. Presumably, hopefully, those rumors about RE4 remake are still true. Um, but this looks like a wonderful sort of. I don't know. I still haven't jumped into 7 because for whatever reason, scary stuff isn't scary in third person to me, but first person makes me pee and poop in my pants. Um, this looks more. It looks less like claustrophobic, like creepy, hoarder house horror, and more like, oh no, the werewolf is here. You have to fight him, which is like more my speed. I appreciate, like, we heard those rumors where it was like there's going to be witches and a haunted castle full of ghosts, and there's going to be werewolves, and I'm like, people are like, that sounds dumb, that sounds like Universal monsters, but I'm here for it. Like,
Mhm.
that's a challenge for them. That's them. Will you cool it?
No,
Am I speaking of werewolves?
I think about like one of my favorite aspects of Resident Evil 4 is when you're in the village and you hear a chainsaw revving, and sometimes you don't turn around fast enough and you get your head lopped off. And I love the idea of just like you fending off an army of villagers and they're all mutated and deformed, but then all of a sudden, like you hear a howl and there's like this giant wolf claw rips your neck out. Like that sounds amazing to me. That is
Yeah,
so extremely my shit.
they were showing a lot of forest shots and like pans where all of the trees were kind of occluding your vision, and it felt very much like a almost Blair Witch like, but like what's going on just beneath or just past
Yep.
that tree? I can't see it. It's probably going to try to kill me. Like there's
Yeah, which is like fascinatingly is kind of the video game realization of what some of the international covers for Resident Evil 4 looked like. The one we got in America was like pretty actiony and straightforward, but some of the ones they got overseas of this sort of like silhouette forest line and the chainsaw man just standing there like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like this feels like it's picking up on that. I could not be more excited for this game.
yeah, that one's
Here we go.
exciting to see. And given the recent release dates for the franchise, hopefully it's coming out early in 2021. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about that one soon. I do want to get to some of the indie, more unexpected stuff because we'll probably talk about GTA in the future, but GTA 5 is also coming to PS5. If you didn't see at the beginning of the show, I do want to talk about some of the cool indie stuff that we saw. Specifically, I wanted to start off with the Anna Perna Interactive published Stray, where you're seemingly playing a cute cat in a sci-fi cyberpunk world.
This got shown off like years ago. Like this was originally titled HK, and it was one of those like cool demos that was just kind of kicking around Twitter. There were a handful of gifs of it. People were like, "This looks great," and then it just kind of went quiet. And I'm so happy to hear that it's actually coming out and actually being. So it's also weird to be like, "Ooh, world premiere! Oh my god, this looks amazing! I can't wait!" And then just be like, "Oh, I could have already seen this like years ago." Like, so I don't know. I'm also
mean,
down to play as a cat. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think it's about time. It's 2020. Why haven't we played as a cat in a cyberpunk setting? I mean, it's obscene that it's taken this long, right? I just I love it. It seems really stupid and really awesome at the same time, which is like the two things I love the most. Like, I love this idea of playing as a cat through a very kind of intricate maze of cyberpunk inspired environments, and cats are weird and eccentric and erratic, and cyberpunk is too, and I think it's a marriage made in heaven. Like, so good.
And another one that really stood out to me, and I think stood out to all of us as we were watching, was Little Devil Inside, which had a really unexpected, weird trailer. This is another one that's been out there for a while, I believe. But this was Brian. This one stuck out to you, right?
Oh yeah. This was like what was your take on this? Because I feel like on our post show I yelled about this for like 25 minutes, but
I loved the jumps between I guess warfare, like these action shots in the forest, shooting a bear in the butt, and fighting these weird monsters, and then just seemingly uptight British men on the toilet or in bed. The like weird back and forth of tone in this I sort of loved, and I don't have like a full sense of what the game is going to be, but I
No,
want to know.
yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I think that the sort of like slapstick googly eyes are doing a lot of the heavy lifting out of like the drudge and despair and sort of darkness that this game is carrying in general. Like it reminds me of a lot of like sort of old like claymation stuff that you would see around the holidays, or like those there's that weird like Christian claymation show that aired on Sunday mornings that I watched as a kid because I was like, I just want to watch anything cartoon shaped. Um, this is a really interesting looking game to me, and I'm really happy that it got some shine in here today, because I don't know exactly how it'll play out, like if it's soulsy or if it's got survival elements, but I really love the art style. I love the switching back and forth between the perspectives, or at least storylines. Like, I'm not sure if there's going to be like this undercurrent story where you basically have to flash back to the old man and he takes a dump, and then you go back
So
into the battlefield. And
this was on Steam Greenlight as of 2015, and it had a Kickstarter, I think, earlier this year. I've got the description here. It says, Little Devil Inside is a truly engaging 3D action adventure RPG where you are thrown into a surreal but somewhat familiar setting with men, women, or men, presumably women, creatures, and monsters to interact with, learn, and hunt, survive, and discover the world that exists beyond. The gameplay: atmospheric gameplay experience, mission driven, interconnected storyline, freedom of play. Yeah, it sounds like it's doing everything. Like, there's
I'm not
survival,
getting
there's
a lot.
combat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, yeah.
it's an interesting one, but it's one that I want to keep an eye on after that showing because it was so singular in some of what we saw that I'm excited to learn more about that one for sure. As we're sort of getting toward the wrap up, though, is there anything else that stuck out to any of you, like certain game wise, or just like closing thoughts on the show as a whole? Max, I'll start with you.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Are we talking about our feelings on the overall presentation?
Yeah, let's just talk about the overall thing as we wrap up.
Like, here's the thing. I'm gonna buy a PlayStation 5. I'm excited to see what it looks like, and I kind of it's nice to have as much as I'm like, it's just a dumb box. You're gonna play games on it. That being said, like, I'm still unsure exactly what games I'm gonna be playing on it after I take it out of the box and put it in my entertainment center. Hopefully, it fits in there. But like, as far as the sort of launch lineup presentation, this felt like a little bit lopsided, and I'm I'm definitely going to get a PlayStation 5. I'm currently not super excited about it just because what's it going to do that I haven't already, that I'm not able going to be doing with my PS4, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
For sure. Brian, what about you?
Yeah, I think like I halfway get where you're going, Max, but I'm like also weirdly like super excited for it because I feel like it's going to feel like a big enough leap once you take it out of the box and it looks different than anything you own already. And then you set it up, it'll have a brand new UI. Like, we have been running off of the same PlayStation UI for basically 7 years now. And even like anything subtle in terms of haptic feedback and 3D audio and all that, and like instant load times, I think that all of that stuff is going to sort of congeal to make an experience that feels new. In terms of the games we're seeing right now, I'm totally with you. It doesn't, nothing like they look phenomenal, but there wasn't really like a thing that you're like, you absolutely couldn't be able to do this on current gen. That said, I mean, we watched the live stream on Twitch, and so like we'll learn more once we have it in our hands.
I want to know more, and I'm excited to know more. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
I will say too, real quick, just a footnote, that this is the closest I felt to like that really like that E3 feeling, like that excitement of like all of us being in the same room watching a conference together and like clapping and cheering. And I think I know why we didn't need that last week, and I'm glad we didn't have it last week, but I'm glad we had it this year at some point because it helped a little bit.
Yeah. And Lucy, what about you?
I'll just, I think it was a really strong showing. It was very E3-ish. It felt so good to see new games by like a huge eclectic bunch of developers. One thing I wish they would have done is shown some Spider-Man gameplay. I think what we were missing from that this whole thing was this kind of, again, just that leap. Like, and I understand, Max, where you're coming from, but I truly believe that we will be able to see this leap in action. I believe it can be expressed through a demo that we will watch on our screens. I think Ratchet and Clank almost got there, like it really did, like with those jumping through the environments that just quickly there was no loading times whatsoever. Or hitches whatsoever. I think that Spider-Man would have, like, a little bit of gameplay would have gone a long way to really cementing what the PlayStation 5 can do rather than what we will see on the PlayStation 5.
Yeah, I think we're gonna, thankfully, with that game, being no more than 6 months away, we're probably gonna get to see more of it pretty soon. And it's kind of nuts to think that in 1 year, Sony first party is giving us Dreams, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, and a new Spider-Man, among whatever else. It's not a bad PlayStation exclusive year behind us and coming up ahead. But that's going to wrap up our thoughts on the PlayStation conference for now. I'm sure after a few more days, we can come back and talk about it next week and probably have so much more to say because there are so many other games. But thank you, Brian. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Lucy, for joining me for this episode and for this whole day of discussing this conference. It was very exciting.
And Jonathan, thank you for hosting dozens of episodes of this show where there was no PlayStation 5 news.
And
feels
still
like
making it super entertaining.
We have stuff to talk about. It's great.
Big collective sigh of finally some food,
Yeah, it's nice to finally have.
So hungry for so long. We finally get a tidbit, a little bit of bread.
It's been a full year of that gif where the guy opens the fridge and he's like, oh man.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot of months straight of stuff to talk about between Last of Us, Ghost, Spider-Man, and the PS5 itself and everything else. But thank you all for joining me for this episode. Thank you to Red, our producer, for producing this episode. And thank you to everyone listening and watching at home. We hope you enjoyed the show. We hope you enjoyed that conference. Please send in your thoughts to beyond@ign.com and we can read some on next week's show. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening and for watching. We hope you're safe. We hope you're well. And as always, beyond.
Beyond.